Over the last several years, I've noticed certain criticisms of Batman gaining greater and greater traction. These criticisms aren't aimed at particular stories or characters or interpretations of characters, but at the basic concept of Batman. Those who offer these criticisms argue that Batman, and by extension most Batman stories, are inherently problematic because Batman is a wealthy white man who focuses his efforts, his frequently violent efforts, on targets who are criminals, yes, but who are also poor, mentally ill, or socially marginalized in other ways. To make matters worse, Batman also acts as a de facto agent of the state. Depending on the story, the cops may or may not want Batman's help, but he's nearly always doing their work for them, work which often involves relentlessly pursuing the underprivileged for their offenses while ignoring the more far-reaching crimes of the rich and the powerful. As a lifelong Batman fan, and someone with a worldview that leans considerably to the left, I have to say that I find these criticisms to be valid. They don't stop me from seeking out and enjoying Batman stories, usually, but they are things that I notice as well, and I understand why they might be turn-offs for some people, especially people who don't have the deeply rooted lifelong affection for the character that I have. Fortunately, there is a Batman story, a series of Batman stories, in fact, that tackles these criticisms head-on. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you've been reading it, maybe you haven't. Either way, settle in for a few minutes while I tell you about The Next Batman. And this is a relatively recent publication, so if you haven't read The Next Batman, The Next Batman's Second Son, or I Am Batman, and you don't want to know what happens, consider yourself warned, because there are going to be spoilers. So, last year, 2021, I told you it was recent, DC Comics did another one of those company-wide events it's so fond of. This one was called Future State, and it featured stories centered on young successors to established DC characters set in, get this, a possible near future. One of the Future State books was a 4-part miniseries titled The Next Batman, the protagonist of which is the son of Lucius Fox, who assumes the mantle of Batman a few years after the apparent death of the original Batman. The Gotham City in which this Batman operates is similar to the Gotham we've come to know from most modern Batman stories, but in this near future, things have gotten worse in a few important, and on the parts of the writer, deliberate ways. Both the government and public opinion have turned harshly against masked vigilantes, which has led to the passage of a shoot-on-sight law, making it legal for masked vigilantes, like, say, Batman, to be, you guessed it, shot on sight. The mayor of Gotham ran on a staunch anti-mask platform, and yes, this was published last year. The creators were very much aware of the real-world connotation of anti-mask. As part of that anti-mask campaign, the mayor has empowered an army of private police, the Peacekeepers, to enforce the shoot-on-sight law. Added to these concerns are the personal troubles faced by this Batman, and actually, the story gets a little clever when it comes to revealing the identity of this Batman. At first, we're led to believe that he is Luke Fox, who previously fought crime under the guise of Batwing, but then we learn that Batman is actually Jace Fox, Luke's brother. The bait and switch approaches being a bit too cute, but ultimately, I think it works. The reveal comes relatively early in the miniseries, and it's not presented as a big, shocking twist, more of a quiet moment. And as the story goes along, Jace Fox, defying expectations and doing things people might more readily expect his brother to do, becomes kind of a recurring theme. We learn that in the absence of Bruce Wayne, Lucius Fox has been left in control of Wayne Enterprises and the Wayne fortune. We also learn that Jace is not exactly the pride of the Fox family. His brother Luke, in particular, isn't very happy to see Jace when he reappears at the bedside of their sister Tamara, who is hospitalized in a coma as a result of an earlier attack from the villain Ratcatcher. Because of what happened to Tam, as well as other recent events in Gotham, Jace's parents, Lucius and Tanya, have turned against masked vigilantes, no longer drawing a distinction between the bad guys and the ones who think they're the good guys. Tanya Fox, a lawyer, has been hired by the mayor's office to defend the controversial new shoot-on-sight law, and Lucius, through his company, has been supplying equipment to the peacekeepers. So, it's not a good time to be Batman. It's not a good time for Jace to be Batman, but he is Batman. He's trying to do what's right, trying to help in the best way he can. That's good because, as usual, Gotham needs his help. It's a darker, bleaker world than ours, but in ways that reflect and amplify real-world problems. The Peacekeepers, technically distinct from the Gotham City Police Department, but on the same side, enforcing the law, are overtly violent and protected by the law, while the so-called good cops on the GCPD, as always there are a few, are too timid or powerless to stop them. This places Batman explicitly on the side of the people of Gotham, fighting for them, protecting them, not just from supervillains, but from cops who are legally empowered to kill them with minimal provocation and no repercussions. That positioning of Batman as a defender of the people rather than the status quo is reinforced by the story of the next Batman miniseries. In the first issue, Batman rescues a pair of teenagers who have just joined a masked street gang from the Peacekeepers. At the end of the first issue, a pair of masked assailants brutally beat a man to death in an alley. In issue 2, Batman tracks the assailants down, but learns that things are more complicated than he thought. The victim, named Jershevsky, was a child predator, and the attackers, named Eric and Sarah, are the parents of a child Jershevsky groomed, abducted, and killed. Because they wore masks to kill Jershevsky and were caught on surveillance video doing so, Eric and Sarah are subject to the shoot-on-sight law. But Batman believes they deserve a fair trial, not to be gunned down in the street, and decides to deliver them to an ally in the police, the actual police, rather than abandon them to the Peacekeepers. Getting Eric and Sarah past the Peacekeepers takes some effort. At one point, Eric decides that while he doesn't want to get killed by the Peacekeepers, getting arrested by the police doesn't really work for him either, so he attacks Batman, who is injured from an earlier run-in with the Peacekeepers. Batman fends off Eric and convinces him that police custody is their best option, but unfortunately, Eric doesn't make it. On the way to their rendezvous with Detective Chubbs, Batman's ally within the GCPD, the three of them are about to be overwhelmed by the pursuing Peacekeepers, and Eric sacrifices himself so that Batman and Sarah can get away, detonating an explosive that kills him and takes out a couple of Peacekeepers as well. The world we see in the next Batman is deeply broken. That brokenness forces even the heroes, or those who want to be heroes, to live with compromises. Jace hides his identity as Batman from his family not only for their own protection, the classic superhero secret identity motivation, but because his parents have chosen to side with Batman's most powerful enemies, the Peacekeepers and the mayor's office. Detective Chubbs, a reluctant ally to say the least, is willing to work with Batman to see Sarah taken alive, but also feels compelled to shoot Batman in the chest before they part company, lest her fellow cops suspect her of being in cahoots with a masked outlaw. Batman's fine, his armored costume stops the bullet, but the implications of the moment are clear. Even the relatively good cops need to behave like bad cops in order to survive. In the Gotham of the next Batman, it costs more to do the right thing than to do the wrong thing. And if that sounds familiar, it should. That's the point. The next Batman and the two subsequent series that I'll mention here in a bit was written by John Ridley, the Oscar-winning screenwriter of 12 Years a Slave. Ridley has a long and diverse resume as a writer with TV and film credits ranging from sitcoms like Martin, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and The John Larroquette Show, to animated superhero shows Static Shock and Justice League, to the blaxploitation spoof Undercover Brother. The next Batman isn't his first work in comics, but it's still nice to have a writer with his experience and pedigree from outside comics come in and write something as smart, thoughtful, and pertinent, not to mention fundamentally sound, as this. Ridley's past work has dealt extensively with issues of race, social justice, and inequality, but he's also a skilled teller of crime stories. He definitely has something to say about the state of the world and what Batman's proper place in it should be, but he delivers that message through a story that is well-paced, populated by compelling characters, and which, despite the relative lack of familiar faces, feels like a Batman story. Jace Fox definitely makes for a different Batman than Bruce Wayne, but again, that's by design. As the son of Lucius Fox, Jace has enjoyed the same sort of economic privilege as Bruce, but as a black man in the United States, he also has a much deeper and more personal understanding of systemic inequality and injustice than Bruce ever could. The most important trait shared by Jace and Bruce is a determination to make Gotham City better, even if it's only one person at a time. Jace's Batman has to carry on that fight with limitations the original Batman generally hasn't had to contend with. While his family's fortune gives him access to considerable resources, Jace is operating as Batman without his father's knowledge, so it's not as if he can simply start spending family money on the sort of vast, constantly replenished arsenal Bruce relied upon. Jace's Batman has a certain amount of tech, his armored costume, batarangs, a grappling gun, a motorcycle, plus remote intel and technical support from his friend Vol, with whom he maintains regular voice contact. But when he loses his motorcycle during a clash with the Peacekeepers, he can't simply call in the Batmobile or the Batplane. Instead, he's forced to steal a car in order to attempt to transport Eric and Sarah to the meeting place with Detective Chubbs. It's a somewhat jarring beat for those of us who are used to the obsessively prepared original Batman, but it's also a clever reminder that whether he's stealing a car or inserting himself into a police investigation, Batman has always been willing to break the law in the service of justice. The only reason Bruce Wayne's Batman hasn't stolen more cars is because he usually doesn't need to. The artwork in the next Batman is by Laura Braga and Nick Darrington, with each of them providing pencils and inks at various points throughout the series. Their work is clean, subtle when it has to be, and clear enough to carry the load of telling the story without Ridley having to come in and underline things through dialogue or captions. The reveal that Jace, not Luke, is Batman is accomplished entirely visually, and it comes through with no misunderstanding. There are a few silent multi-panel fight and chase sequences that play very well too. Braga and Darrington show themselves to be just as good at the small stuff as at the big stuff, which is an important ability for a comic book artist to have, I think. And on top of everything else, their art, with a big assist from colorists Arif Prianto and Tamara Bonvillain, is gorgeous and always a pleasure to look at. Following the conclusion of the next Batman, the Jace Fox Batman has returned as the star of 2 additional books: the digital first miniseries, The Next Batman Second Son, a prequel to The Next Batman, which begins shortly before Jace takes on the identity of Batman, and the ongoing monthly series, I Am Batman, which picks up where Second Son leaves off. These series fill in a bit more of Jace's backstory, how he learned to fight, why he has such a rocky relationship with the rest of his family, as well as how the Peacekeepers started and came to dominate the streets of Gotham. Both series are also written by John Ridley, working with various artists, and are compelling for the same reasons as the next Batman miniseries. The focus on Batman as a fighter for the people and against the oppressive police apparatus, the struggles of Jace to find a balance between his relationships with his family and his secret life as Batman, as well as his determination to make good after a wild and reckless adolescence that left him dependent on his father's money and influence to stay out of trouble. This is a Batman who insists to us, through narration, that he has nothing to prove, but it's pretty obvious he does. To the government, to the people he's trying to protect, to his family, and to himself. He doesn't need to prove himself to me, though. Not as Batman, and not as a character in general. I'm sold. The I Am Batman monthly title is ongoing, up to issue 9 as of this recording. I read the entire run so far to research this video, and I plan to keep reading it after this. John Ridley demonstrates that he not only understands Jace Fox's Batman, but he understands Batman, period. What makes a good Batman story, and what elements of the classic Batman formula need some adjustments to not only keep the character relevant, but to ensure that his devotion to justice is more than just a self-flattering conceit. Ridley has also shown a willingness to experiment, not just by placing a new person under the cowl to be Batman, but in the most recent issues of I Am Batman, relocating Batman from Gotham to New York City. Ridley, it seems, doesn't just want to tinker with the character or repair some of the more problematic aspects of the core premise, but to explore the boundaries of what makes a Batman story a Batman story. Is a guy in a Batman costume all you need, or is there more to it than that? I'm looking forward to following John Ridley and Jace Fox as they continue on their journey to figure that out. I love Batman. I love classic, mainstream, original recipe, whatever you want to call him, Batman. Bruce Wayne, Assorted Robins, Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, Gotham City. That's Batman. Those are the elements that come to mind when I think of Batman, and some version of that Batman is what I'm going to talk about in most of the episodes in this series. But this? Jace Fox, the next Batman? This is good. This is intriguing. This is encouraging. This speaks well for the future of Batman, for the future of all the Batmans, for all of their potential. And what about Jace Fox? What's his potential? Well, it's early yet, but if the stories continue to be as good as they have been so far, he might wind up not just the next Batman, but the best Batman ever.